Hello and a warm welcome to this edition of The Business Of, with myself, Gugulethu Mfuphi, host of the multi-award-winning Kaya Biz on Kaya 959. Well, as you would know, if you listen to us on Kaya Biz, we tend to talk about the business of everything. But today, we're talking about the business of luxury. Yep, especially when it comes to the pre-owned or pre-loved market. Now, for many who might not be aware, South Africa's economy, sure enough, has its challenges and consumers have been under pressure. But that does not deny the fact that we as South Africans and our peers across the continent have a special taste for all things luxury. Someone who knows all about this from a business point of view, the consumer dynamics we witness, and just how competitive we are when it comes to our international counterparts is Michael Zaharev, the co-founder and managing director of Luxity. Such a pleasure to have you, Michael.
Great to be here with you again.
I must say, I'm excited for this conversation because many of our listeners would know that we speak to you almost every quarter because there's always a lot of refreshing insight that you've witnessed within the pre-owned luxury space. And maybe let's contextualize a conversation by getting an understanding of who Luxity is and how you actually started off in the pre-owned luxury space.
Yeah, so Luxity today is the Africa's largest pre-owned luxury reseller. What that means is we resell luxury goods like handbags, shoes, accessories, watches from the world's leading brands like Louis Vuitton, Rolex, Gucci, and many more. And we got started 8 years ago. Originally, we were just an online store, and then we moved into retail as well, effectively becoming the first omni-channel retailer in South Africa. And most recently, we've been voted South Africa's fastest growing e-commerce company by Financial Times. So it's been quite a road over the last 8 years, but it's definitely an industry that 8 years ago didn't really exist in South Africa and is now only at the beginning of its potential in terms of pre-owned luxury.
That's phenomenal growth. Firstly, to keep a business going for 8 years, and of course in the space that you operate in, and then to receive the accolades that you have. So well done, firstly. To you.
Thank you.
But I guess we also need to address the misconception that might exist in the market that pre-owned, pre-loved, how do I know it's not fake? How do I know it's not in a bad condition?
Yeah, I mean, that's really where we began was, first of all, being in a third world country, your consumers are always a lot more skeptical. So that's why I guess South Africa was a little bit behind the trend when it came to pre-owned, which is a concept that's existed, in Europe and the Western economies for much longer. So that was really the first hurdle we had to get across is, is it fake? Is there stigma of why am I buying pre-owned? Is it because I can't afford to buy new? So getting across past those first stigmas was really our first step. That's what we did is, like our beautiful store we're in today, building beautiful stores, creating an experience which is a luxury experience. So you don't feel like you're getting a second-hand experience,
exactly.
And of course, as you've seen, the quality of our goods, like all luxury goods, they hold that quality over time. And that's why they hold their value and you can resell them. So you're not getting something that is inferior in any way. You're just getting something that you might not have access to anymore because either its brand's not available in South Africa or its model's no longer available, and generally at a lower price point.
And that's important for many South Africans looking for great quality that is affordable. But as I was saying to you when I walked into the store, so we're here at the Nelson Mandela store, and what you find is a wide variety of luxury goods. And the first thing that I mentioned to you was like, hold on, is everything here pre-owned? Because this is a lot of stuff that you have. And you actually said yes, so give us some context. Where does this come from? How do you even verify as well the quality and the originality of the goods you sell?
Yeah, so I mean, right now in stock we have over 3,000 unique items.
Sure.
So
and by unique, you mean one of a kind, limited edition?
I mean, when it's pre-owned, everything is one of a kind. So if we get this handbag in right now, we don't know when we're going to have another one. So that's a lot of what drives the market is, that fear of missing out effect, because you see it at lists, you've been waiting for that handbag. In 5 minutes, it might not be there anymore, and you don't know when it is next coming back. So yeah, we have 3,000 items in stock. We're selling hundreds a month. And every single one of these items is sourced from local individuals. We're not importing anything. It's all from other consumers who have bought it new and are reselling it, or people who maybe even bought it pre-owned, used it a bit and are reselling it back to buy another item. So it's certainly really good from that point of view because it supports a local economy. You know, it's a way you're buying luxury fashion, but all of that money is being retained in the local economy.
South Africans have money then, Michael? That's what I'm hearing from this. And I think it is quite refreshing that you are keeping it within the local economy in terms of the supply as to where it comes from and, of course, selling it into the local market. But let's talk about the business of luxury, because for many of us, we tend to think, oh, wow, that's something that's unique to particular European states, maybe Northern America as well. And when we look at the company updates we see from the likes of LVMH, we know that they also tap into markets like China, which have been booming in terms of luxury growth. But post-pandemic, that's changed. I'm hoping that you can give us some context just into the business of luxury goods globally and what we're also finding that's unique to the South African or African market.
Well, yeah, in terms of the global context, the luxury market has been really thriving since the COVID pandemic. What we found is, you know, as restrictions lifted, many consumers who couldn't necessarily spend on luxury entertainment or other luxury experiences really started shifting towards luxury goods because they were really one of the markets that opened up. So recently there's been a boom in the luxury goods space overall internationally. And that's continued post-pandemic, and we're still seeing good growth even this year. In terms of South Africa, it's had much the same trends. I mean, many people will note the queues that were outside Louis Vuitton in Sandton City during COVID, and that's translated through to the pre-owned market industry as well, also been booming internationally as well as locally. In terms of what drives the market, you know, Africans have a very different taste generally to Europeans. You know, we're sometimes a bit behind on the trends, but we're also very aspirational. So what we find is the African consumer compared to the European consumer is looking at a lot more of a louder luxury, you know, making the statement of I've arrived, you know, I'm here, making sure that it's the brands that are selling are really the ones that are recognizable. And that's a little bit different to the trends we're seeing in Europe, especially recently, which is a lot more of quiet luxury, you know, undertoned, not showing your wealth. And it's going to be interesting because we have seen, you know, Africa catching up to Europe much faster, at a faster and faster pace. So will that translate in Africa is yet to be seen. What's another interesting point to note is that Africans, as a percentage of their income, spend more on luxury than any other demographic.
Whoa.
So, you know, when you hear that, you'd be surprised, but the reality is Africans generally have a lot lower income. So it's a percentage of that lower income. As our income increases as an African continent, we're going to become much more of a prospect to luxury brands as they continue to look for growth.
I find that intriguing because typically the African continent and the word luxury are not synonymous. People often think, hold on, how do you even compare the two and see them converge? And I guess that's the beauty of not only what you've witnessed through Luxity, but when you look at the environment overall. And is that notion changing where even the growth and development of proudly African luxury brands is also growing?
Yeah, I think luxury as a concept is really growing because people are resonating more to something that's high quality. And with the pre-owned industry being able to resell it, you know, a lot of people think it's inaccessible to them. I can't afford that much on an item. But the reality is, and what a lot of the pre-owned luxury brands are starting to shift towards, is saying to a consumer that if you look at an item in terms of cost per wear or cost per use, and you're buying it pre-owned luxury and you're able to resell it at the end of your, you know, style of that item, it's working out as the same cost per wear as a fast fashion item, which you can only use for so long. So even for Africans who might say, oh, I can't afford that, or, you know, it might not be in my wheelhouse, what we've realized is if you make the payment plans available to them, if you make the correct financial facilities available to them, it does become more realistic. And it's not just to say, oh, I'm, you know, giving you credit so that I can trick you into buying something. It's actually something that's beneficial to you because it's not a more expensive way if you do it intelligently.
Then maybe tell us more about that. You know, not only what it is that we're buying, which is obviously luxury goods, maybe you can give us some insight into the product data, but also how we're actually paying for it. Because the assumption would be, well, if you can't afford it, you need to access credit. Credit might not be favorable for a luxury item if you don't manage it effectively. But as you say, you found models and ways of making it accessible and affordable for South Africans and peers across the continent.
Yeah, so one of the things we offer at Luxity is a payment plan where over 3 months you're able to pay off your item. So you reserve the item as it comes in, not to miss out. You have 3 months to pay it off. And it's so successful that
With or without interest?
no interest, completely interest free, and what we found is that 1 in 2 of our customers actually opt to shop this way. And it's not always someone who can't afford it. A lot of the time, it's someone who have 5, 10 items on reservation and they're paying them off as they're able to.
Makes sense.
So, and then the other interesting thing is what we find is we also offer a 70% buyback guarantee. So if you buy something from us and you want to resell it to us, we'll give you 70% back of what you paid for it. And that's a minimum. And what you really see is that very often we'll have someone that maybe buys a handbag from us, wears it for 3 years, returns it. The condition will still be good because it holds that condition. It's a luxury item doesn't just mean a fancy brand, you know. It means, one, the heritage of the brand, but also the construction. It's built to last. And that's really the value you're getting. So you can use it for 3 or 4 years. When you spot something else, you can return that item, resell it, make most of your money back, if not all of your money back, and reinvest that in another item. So your cost per use is very low. Whereas when we're talking about fast fashion, you buy it, you wear it a bit, it either goes out of trend very fast or it falls apart very fast. And then the resale value of that is, of course, zero.
Exactly. Let's talk about the assessment of actually ensuring the authenticity of the items. You and I have discussed this before, but I know that there's always a few peers who might joke and say, well, it's in the threading, it's in the detail, in the zip, it's in this particular quality, but it's a lot more extensive than that as you do at Luxity.
Yeah, well, the counterfeit industry is constantly growing, and now there's been this rise of the super fakes. Before it was it was very obvious where you would buy a fake. You'd buy it in a China mall. It would look different to just a brand enthusiast. They'd be able to see the difference between a fake item and a real item. But it's become a lot more formalized of a market now with Facebook and Instagram and all these other ways of selling items and marketing items. We've really seen the rise of a super fake. And a super fake is really indistinguishable from from the original to the naked eye. So before you could, yes, compare stitching, you could compare the alignment of things like that. Now we've had to become much more advanced. So one of the things we even do as an example, as just one of the extra checks we do, is we do a microscopic analysis of a thread, for example.
Whoa.
Because the fakes will use the same color thread, which perhaps previously they didn't, but when you zoom into that thread 100 times, you can see that that thread is made up of 5 strands versus the Louis Vuitton thread, which is made up of 8 strands. So the quality of the thread is different. So, and what that really means when you get down to it is that that item, although it might look identical to the naked eye, it's going to fall apart faster because the construction and the materials used are of a lower quality. So we're constantly having to find new methods and new tricks to keep making sure we're ahead of the counterfeiters, because for every one thing you find out, they then fake that and then find another thing. So,
Definitely.
so it goes all the way down to needing to, with some of the bags, you need to really get to a point where you're actually X-ray scanning them to see the construction of the internals, because that's where they...
Intense.
Yeah, so I mean, when we're talking about Birkins, that's what the pre-owned authenticators are starting to do, is because, when we're talking about a Birkin handbag, that's R250,000 at resale. You can think of the extent that counterfeiter is going to go if his return can be R250,000. Very high. So, you have to keep investing.
Definitely. What does this mean, though, from a skills point of view? Because I'm assuming the kind of team members that you work with in order to analyze, microscan, X-ray these items, certainly not have to, have a heightened level of skill in order to identify these potential counterfeits.
Yeah, you have to have a great attention of detail. And these are skills we have to build. When we began, we were the first pre-owned company. There was no pre-owned authenticators. We had to teach ourselves, build those skills out, build these methods out, a lot of research, a lot of investigating the bag, understanding the heritage. So it's certainly one of the most difficult things is to find that skill to continuously train up new authenticators. And when you're dealing with 50 brands across 7 categories, authenticating a handbag is completely different to authenticating a watch. You have to have an expert watchmaker authenticate a watch. You can't just have, anyone authenticate a watch. Whereas a handbag, you have to understand certain constructions and things like that.
Geesh. Well, if you've just joined us, we are in conversation with Michael Zahareev. He is the CEO and co-founder of Luxity, South Africa's first and fastest growing business when it comes to the second-hand luxury goods market, or pre-owned and pre-loved products, given that their authenticity can be verified. We're in a phenomenal conversation talking about all things luxury and the business thereof, what it is that you and I are buying, and most importantly, how the industry works and operates, and the unique qualities that we're witnessing from a South African point of view. Michael, you've given us such great perspective in terms of understanding not only how you started as a business, where you are in terms of the global standards of pre-owned luxury goods, but also the skills and the capacity you've had to build and incorporate internally. I'm keen to talk about customers. As we're sitting here today, I got all dressed up to look like luxury because we're talking about luxury.
And you do.
Thank you. But I'm keen to understand, as we have been seated here as well, we've been seeing a wide variety of customers who have walked in and walked out, and many who have a very clear understanding of the products they buy, but also a heightened level of enthusiasm. So who buys pre-owned goods? Who perhaps is happy to spend on which particular items? And maybe you can give us some insight on the preferences we also have as the African consumer market.
Sure. I mean, we have a large variety of customers. So, we see it from the executive secretary who might not be able to afford that item, but really gravitates to a certain brand. So, she's going to save up, she's going to make use of our payment plan, and she's really going to wait for that perfect item to come in at that perfect price. And she's going to cherish that item for many, many years. And then we have our everyday customer who buys and sells all the time. They'll buy a couple products a year, they'll resell a couple products that they're no longer using or no longer speaks to their style. Those are what we call our fashionistas. They're really engaging, and they're using pre-owned really as a way to access not only more products over a year and resell, so they can reinvest that money into more products, but also in a way to get brands that aren't available in South Africa, such as Hermes, Chanel. You can only really get those brands pre-owned in South Africa, but also to get access to models that are no longer available. And then on the highest end, we have what we call our ultra high net worth individual. This is the kind of person who can go buy new without thinking about the money at all, but they're buying pre-owned for that access point of view. The brands and limited edition pieces that you can no longer get, but they're very cherished. And again, you have to get those through pre-owned. So, it spans from someone who can't really afford to buy new to someone who can afford to buy anything.
100%. Sounds like it's a very intriguing price range as well, right? Someone who is disciplined in their financial management and someone who's just as disciplined but just has access to more. So I'm assuming in terms of price ranges, that also comes into effect.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about price ranges, we're selling anything from a 5,000 Rand pair of sunglasses pre-owned all the way up to a 500,000 Rand Rolex or 250,000 Rand Birkin. So there's a huge difference in price ranges. And then, of course, you have the kinds of customers who are buying. For example, we have one customer who's buying more handbags in a month than there are days in a month. Whoa. I mean, we always wonder what she does with them.
I was about to say, does she need a friend?
I think when we asked her what she does with it, she says she gives to her sisters. So.
I'm happy to apply as one, potentially and each on the list. You mentioned the handbags, you mentioned the watches, and those are the various categories, right? And I can imagine you see growth in different categories, and maybe give us some insight there. Well, we're at a store, so of course the phone would ring because customers are calling, but give us some insight there in terms of, number one, where you see the highest level of growth in the categories, and then from there, perhaps we can talk about which brands might be performing really well in the local market.
Sure. So our biggest category was always handbags. It was our foundational category. From there, we added shoes, most recently clothing. And we kind of, there's two aspects to it. So there's the fashion aspect, handbag, shoes, clothing, accessories, and then there's the more investment aspects. So luxury watches and jewelry,
and you can hold for a long period of time and
Exactly.
actually seen as an alternative investment class.
Exactly. So they're very different kinds of markets. And recently we've really been investing in the luxury watches and jewelry category. We think that's going to show the most growth in the long term. There's also a more established category. Pre-owned watches as a category have been around a lot longer than pre-owned handbags. There's an intrinsic value to them. So there are quite different market dynamics there. So certainly those are really the categories that we see growing.
Got you. I recall a time when we had a conversation about a recent report taking a look at the various brands and how they're performing in South Africa. And at one point, Louis Vuitton was the top selling brand in South Africa, but we've seen that change slightly over the last few months, or I guess quarters, in terms of our buying appetite. So what are we buying? Which brands are booming and might speak to our preferences when it comes to luxury?
Yeah, so Louis Vuitton, as you mentioned, it's one of the top performing brands. In our luxury market report, it was the top performing brand for 5 years in a row. And last year, we actually ranked Chanel above Louis Vuitton because of its exclusivity. Chanel has really got so much demand in South Africa, and because there's no supply to new Chanel, when we're talking about the resale market, it's selling at retail, sometimes above retail, and we're talking about a brand that's doubled in price in the last 5 years. So if you bought a Chanel flat bag 5 years ago and you sold it on the pre-owned market now, you would make an 80% return on your money.
You should have told me this 5 years ago.
Exactly. So, it's all these factors that we look at once a year to establish what is the top brand. But if we're looking at what are the most searched brand, Louis Vuitton and Gucci together make up 1 in 3 searches out of all the brands that we stock. So really, there's definitely a huge weighting to the two biggest, which are Louis Vuitton, followed by Gucci.
Got you. Are we seeing a slow introduction as well, perhaps, of brands that might not be very familiar to the South African market, but because we live in a digital age where there's access to social media, access to heightened information, that we might see new brands creeping in out of interest?
Yeah, I think as luxury has grown its appeal and many more people are gravitating towards it since the COVID era, people are growing a bit tired of looking like everyone else, wearing the same thing. So we're definitely seeing an increase in the demand for like the lesser known brands from a South African context. And additionally, in the next 3 to 4 years, there are definitely going to be a lot of new brand entrants into South Africa. Major shopping centers are reinvesting in their luxury wings to open up space for more luxury because it's been such a well-performing sector overall.
Yeah. I'm keen to also know about the demographics, because there is an assumption, and perhaps it is true, that often women are higher spenders when it comes to luxury. Is that the case when you look at your numbers?
Well, it's difficult to say because, as I mentioned, the price ranges sway so much. So a man might spend 500,000 Rand on a Rolex, a lady might buy 10 handbags. So, it's difficult to say. In terms of our items, we're 70% female, 30% male in terms of our customers. But that's really it. Is shifting a lot. What's also quite interesting is like females or ladies tend to wear their items a lot less. So they'll have more items and they'll really cherish them and use them on special occasions, where when we get men's stock in, generally it's quite used or not used at all. So a man will resell something because he doesn't like it, or he didn't like it after he got it, or he'll just use it so it's essentially not usable anymore.
Oh, wow.
So there's that difference. And I think because we don't take items which are in bad conditions, there's a lot lower access to male stock.
Would that also stand for items that might be vintage, I guess, from the 60s, 70s, where it might have been a family heirloom that's been passed down from generations, and perhaps still of great value, but depends on where it slots in and, of course, its condition?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, and it's not necessarily a good thing, but in general, the luxury brands' quality has decreased slightly over time in terms of their constructions as they've commercialized. So the vintage ones actually hold up much better, generally speaking, than some of the newer items. So yeah, when you see vintage items, you'd be shocked how well they keep. I mean, when we're looking at a Chanel handbag from 30 years ago, we're reselling them now at 150,000, and the condition is as good as the day you bought it. So, if you choose the right item from the right brand, it can really last the test of time.
Definitely. What I'm intrigued by, because what you're helping us understand here is the interpretation of value, understanding how luxury is defined. And as you say, it's the heritage of the brand, the structural integrity of the products, the limited edition, and even the finer detail that's entailed in the making, processing, and development of the product. And what I'm finding here is that when it comes to the view of luxury, there's a psychology behind it, right? Because you need to value something in order for it to, I guess, grow in appreciation, not only in terms of how you use the asset, but also how it might sell in the aftermarket. So I'm keen to understand your thoughts on the psychology of how luxury is viewed. There might be some pessimists who will watch this conversation and think, we're being very aloof and perhaps not sensitive to the inequalities that might exist from an economic point of view. But when it comes to luxury, its perception and the psychology of it, what have your overriding thoughts been here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack there. In general, I think luxury has gotten a bad rep because you have these influencers that are posting about it. It does seem distasteful at times, and they think that's associated with the brand, with the lifestyle. But that isn't really what the lifestyle is about. The lifestyle, the heritage of the brands isn't about showing off or being better. It's about creating a product that is really going to stand the test of time, something that is high quality, something that you can pass down to generations, something that you can create a memory with. That's why we find when people go overseas, they tend to buy a luxury brand, because when they see that handbag, it's going to remind them of their holiday in Paris or when they got engaged. So it's more, there's more to it than when you see an influencer on Instagram saying, look at my new handbag and how fancy I am. And I think that's something that's a trending topic today, but in 10 years' time, in 50 years' time, these products will still exist. And there'll be a different conversation being had about what it means and how luxury is perceived. And that's really what builds the heritage of a brand over time.
100%. What are your thoughts, though, on the future of luxury retail? You mentioned that you're the fastest growing omni-channel in the country, which is a significant amount of growth. We're in one of your stores. We can hear the activity with different customers coming in and out, making purchases, but you also have an online facility. How do you see this changing and evolving in the next 8 years, per se?
Yeah, so I think we have a little bit of a different take, and I think that's the benefit of being pre-owned is you're not locked into how the traditional luxury market is working. So the traditional luxury market is very slow moving. They've been very slow to adapt to the online. They want to stay traditional, have that customer impact face to face. But what we found is our customers want options. If our customer wants to engage with us on WhatsApp, they want to engage with us on WhatsApp. If they want to do it online or in store, we want to be able to service them. But the important thing is having all of your technology integrated and making sure that, when someone's walking into the store, if they're engaged with someone online, you're able to pick up on that conversation immediately, because they expect you to know them as a customer. That's what luxury means. So really, I think the future of luxury is about providing that unique service, because it's the experience as well. The product is the one thing, but you can buy the product in many places. It's about creating that experience, creating that memory for that person where they go, when I went in there, I felt so welcomed, I made a friend, I killed some time, and I got a great product out of it.
I'm intrigued because I was about to ask if that's also influenced by different generations. Perhaps baby boomers still want to have the time to have a conversation and reflect, versus a Gen Z who's like, hey, I just need those sneakers quick as possible.
Yeah, exactly. It's generations, it's demographics, it's all sorts of factors. And that's what it's really about, being able to meet the customer's needs no matter what they are. Do I want to buy something quickly? Do I want to engage? And making sure you're able to do that at a certain level. And I think really the interesting thing for us, and where we're really investing a lot in, is how do we now integrate AI to understand your customer journey, so that when you get in there, into the store, we have a full, complete history of you. We understand how to service you, your needs, how to reach out best to you in a way that's specific to you, and also that we don't lose that knowledge, as staff change or as times change, things like that.
I get it. And that goes beyond just understanding what your shoe size is or your preference in a watch. It's actually understanding the whole journey and the experience that you prefer in order to make sure that you're best accommodated.
Yeah,
and getting the items you'd like.
100%. I mean, it even goes down to knowing, in South Africa being so multicultural, like knowing what language someone prefers. Not everyone wants to walk in and only speak English, or not everyone feels comfortable being in a very uptight environment. A lot of people say they feel intimidated in some of the luxury stores. So it's about creating that welcoming experience that is specific to each customer.
Got you. I'm hoping that's a call for you, Michael, but we'll find out. Maybe it's someone keeping us busy here in the store. But what's beautiful about your journey, Michael, and perhaps taking it back to where we started, we asked you about Luxity, who you are, what you do, and fundamental to that, you're a business. You're an entrepreneur. You've been thriving in this space. You also have your fingers in many pies, looking at other opportunities within the web development space. Here you in retail. And I'm keen to get your thoughts as an entrepreneur around your journey, specifically when it comes to the luxury space or consumer space. And also bearing in mind that we rather live in a very unique environment like South Africa, where there are many elements that don't offer too much comfortability or certainty and can make for several headwinds that you face as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, for us, this is, I think, our 6th business me and my partner have done. Yeah, so, and with many failures. And I think it's about persisting, being able to really work at it. When we began Luxity, we didn't really see the opportunity at first. We began with a friend who had some handbags to sell, and she didn't feel comfortable selling them on the online classifieds. And we thought, let's create a website and make it more of a legitimate process. And we, to be honest, we didn't come from the luxury space. So we thought, how many people can there be out there that really want to pay 20,000 Rand for a pre-owned handbag? I mean, there can't be that many, right?
You're a tech guru who actually just transitioned into luxury retail.
Exactly. So, and I think sometimes when people speak about entrepreneurship or they see something that's really built into a big business, they often are intimidated and they don't take that first step because they think they have to see the whole vision and the whole picture. But it's actually much better to begin with a little thing. And as you realize what works, keep investing in that and stop doing the things that don't work. And that's really all growing a business is about. It's not about having this master plan that you think is going to go like that. I mean, if that's what you think is going to happen, it's probably not going to work out for you. So that's really what's worked for us. And I think now that we're in a position where we're always thinking, what's next? How do we take what the infrastructure we've built, our client base, and expand that, and also look at what our values are. We're really invested in the local economy. We really want to try look for that next African luxury brand, grow in that African context.
I'm learning so many lessons from this, almost some significant failures, but failures that you've turned into successes, as you say, just to keep going and look at the what next. Speaking of what next, what will success look like for you as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think for us, it's really growing on our values, which is, continuing to invest in the local economy. We really, besides all the negativity we see in South Africa on a constant daily basis, and also a lot of positive feedback as well, I think there's so much opportunity in South Africa, not even in the pre-owned luxury space, which is really in its infancy, but in many other spaces. So, we're always looking, where can we grow here? People are always asking us, why aren't you going international? And I'm like, because there's so much more opportunity here, rather get it, we're local, where you understand the market, then try bother about something that you might or might not understand. So for us, really success is continuing to grow what we do and continuing to grow it locally.
100%. Michael, this has been such a pleasure, learning so much more about the pre-owned luxury space in South Africa, how it's growing, how it's evolving, the uniqueness of your business and your brand, the interesting insights around your customers, who they are, and just how vast the range is in terms of their spend. And more than that, the optimism that you still have as an entrepreneur to continue investing in South Africa. So we wish you all the best going forward and look forward to touching base with you again on Kaya Biz.
Great being with you.
Fantastic. Now that I've been to the store, does that mean that I can get a discount on a bag?
Of course, but don't tell anyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michael. Well, that was my conversation, The Business of Luxury, with Michael Zahareev, who is the co-founder of Luxity. As you know, you can always share your feedback with us on social media spaces. So do get in touch at Kaya On Air. Use the hashtag KayaBiz. And of course, feel free to reach out to @Kaya